The national media seems to be sleeping a little bit on Tommy Lloyd and his Arizona basketball team. What are they missing that us Arizona fans know? And what does it mean going forward? Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day, and this show is brought to you by Birddogs. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit of Arizona basketball because, again, that is right around the corner here. And I think the first thing that we do need to talk about a little bit is why is the national media maybe sleeping on Tommy Lloyd's team a little bit, maybe more than they should? Now, again, I'm on record as saying that I think this is going to be Tommy Lloyd's best team that he's ever had here. I know that you already had the Ben Mathurin team. You had the Ben Mathurin team, along with Christian Coloco, Dalen Terry, that was the number 2 overall seed in the entire tournament. Swept through the regular season, won the Pac-12 regular season and Pac-12 postseason tournament, but then got blasted in the Sweet 16 by Houston. That was certainly the best team. Then last year's team, I thought dramatically outperformed expectations. And a big reason why is because I didn't have many expectations for last year's team. I thought they'd be a fringe top 25 team, but I also didn't look at that roster and say, man, that's got a lot of pros on it, or that's got a lot of, XYZ. There wasn't really any of that. Azuolas Tubelis certainly was very, very good, no doubt about it, but there wasn't that player that you could see who could just take over a game. Now, again, Zoo could do it to a certain extent, but Zoo generally had to just put his head down and just drive to the hoop where, again, it's a little bit less than ideal right there. And you had a lack of ball handling and a lack of three-point shooting, but somehow Arizona got the third overall seed or the second seed out west. We were out there at when Arizona got blasted by Princeton, and quite frankly, it was not pretty. And that's to put it mildly. So I think Tommy Lloyd took a lot of inventory of these past couple years' teams and where they struggled, where they were strong, and what they needed to do going forward. And I think a big part of it was you had to get tougher. And I think that's a little bit where some of the preseason rankings are probably a little bit I think a lot of people are probably a little bit down on Tommy Lloyd's teams, mainly in the postseason. And, quite frankly, I'm okay with them being down a little bit because Arizona doesn't have a lot to go on. Arizona certainly doesn't have a lot to brag about when it comes to the postseason because, again, kind of got pushed around right there. Not only did you get pushed around, you also showed a lack of ball handling that and I think, the media types are saying, we haven't seen a ton of toughness. We haven't seen a lot of ball handling. We're going to take a little bit of a wait and see approach because as the regular season goes, I don't think that there's any question that Tommy Lloyd certainly is the man for the job. 61-11 in his 2 years as a head coach, the all-time winningest coach in college basketball history. But like I said, in the postseason, he's 2-2 now, and outside of the second half against Wright State in the first round, you've got 8 halves of basketball, and 7 of them have been kind of stinky, again, for lack of a better term. So we're going to make the case as to why the national media is missing out a little bit. Now, first, it goes without saying that Tommy Lloyd is a very, very good coach. I mean, you don't come in, you're not able to do what he's been able to do without having a real idea of just kind of the wherewithal and the landscape of college what you're doing in college basketball. But you had to get better ball handling. And not only did you have to get better ball handling, you had to get significantly better ball handling across the board. Now, that meant that Kerr Kriisa was not shown the door because Kerr Kriisa ended up in a very nice spot at West Virginia, making a lot of NIL money. But he was Kirk Crous was not what Arizona needed going forward. Now, you could make the case, as Brian J. Peterson makes, that Kirk Crous significantly raised the floor of your program, and you'd be right. But he also dramatically limits your ceiling because, quite frankly, he's just not that good. He can't really shoot, and on top of that, he wasn't a very good ball handler, and at least for that point guard position, and he was very limited athletically. So that means that first spot is going to go to Kylin Boswell. Kylin Boswell is going to be your starting point guard here at the U of A for as long as he is on campus. Again, I think some of the expectations for him are a little outlandish. I don't see some people have him projected as going in the NBA draft next year. I don't really see that because you watch the NBA, you don't see a lot of dudes that look like Kylin Boswell out there. And again, that's not a diss towards Kylin Boswell. That's just kind of a way it is on the NBA landscape right there. But Boswell is a significantly better basketball player than Kirk Crous. And not only is he significantly better, he's somebody that can stress a defense in a way a lot more than Kirk Crous could. Now, a big thing with Kirk Crous was that he was kind of a streaky shooter, but at the end of the day, he was generally going to shoot about 35 or 36%, which it's just called the way it is. That's just not good enough. And not only is that not good enough, he is also a guy that just wasn't able to get into the lane. There was no middle ground for him. There was no way to set up others. It was basically, I am going to drive to the basket, or I am going to shoot a three, or I am going to pass it. There was none of that. I think with Boswell, you're hoping that he can be a better three-point shooter, and I think there's every reason to believe that he will be a better three-point shooter and have more of an explosive game to where he can get past some players. He can use kind of that physical body, that physical mentality, and get to the hoop, maybe get some floaters. But either way, that's much tougher. That's better ball handling right there for Arizona at that point guard spot. Then after that, at that shooting guard spot, Courtney Ramey. Now, again, Ramey was much like Kerr, although Ramey was a better basketball player than Kerr. And Ramey also, even though it didn't manifest itself against Princeton, Ramey also was able to make some big shots where he could just clear out and make threes. Certainly did that against UCLA in the Pac-12 tournament. But you also saw some limitations with Ramey in that he was essentially a three-point shooter, kind of an average defender who couldn't really get to the hoop, and I think the manner in which I think a lot of people were hoping that he was going to be able to. And I think that was a little frustrating for Arizona fans. So he has moved on in with Jaden Bradley now. Jaden Bradley is a very interesting player for a variety of reasons for Arizona basketball fans. And quite frankly, he should be an exciting player for a variety of reasons. First of all, he's tough, he's physical, and more so than anything, he enjoys getting driving to the basket, and that's something that's been a little bit lost here at U of A in the Tommy Lloyd era. Is guys that can get to the basket off the dribble at that guard position. He can do that. Now, again, got his minutes kind of cut at Alabama as the year went on, but you got to also remember though that Alabama was probably the most talented team in the country, so I'm not going to hold that against him. We're going to continue to talk about this because I think there's a lot to like about Jaden Bradley, and I think some people are forgetting about it. But first, Birddogs. All right, birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. All kinds of fun stuff going on with Birddogs. First of all, Birddogs makes people look good that probably shouldn't otherwise look good, and I think a big part of that is that it's stylish, and not only is it stylish, it can also you can wear Birddogs to a nice event. You can wear it to a casual event, and again, the shorts are awesome. But here's the great thing about it: use code LockedOnCollege for a free tumbler with every purchase. Birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. Check it out. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and continue to talk about Jaden Bradley. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. All right, now time to talk about Jaden Bradley. Again, And I also think that Jaden Bradley, not only is he he's not a great shooter, we talked about that, but I think he can be a pretty good secondary facilitator. He's going to be able to get into the paint to a certain extent. But not only is he going to be able to do all that, I think he's going to bring a little bit of a rugged toughness that maybe we missed, that I think a lot of people thought they were going to get with Courtney Ramey that, again, you just didn't really get, which is kind of is what it is. But from your two backcourt positions right there, you're much tougher. You got better ball handling, and you got guys who can stress a defense, certainly in more of a capacity than Arizona had last year. Then at the small forward spot, Caleb Love. This is where it becomes fascinating. Caleb Love is a lot of what Arizona lacked last year. Caleb Love can get to the hoop. And not only that, Caleb Love can get his own bucket. Now, I know a lot of Arizona fans are very concerned about his lack of efficiency. I don't worry about his lack of efficiency, honestly. And not only do I not worry about it, I think it's really, really far back on the radar because Hubert Davis, not a good coach. I know that they got to the national title game in his first year, but a big part of that was because of how Caleb Love was playing. Caleb Love, I think under Tommy Lloyd, is going to be significantly better, and I think he's going to be significantly more effective than what we've seen in the past from other players that have gone through North Carolina. Because here's the deal. Caleb Love is going to be told that you're going to get 2 or 3 dribbles. You're not going to get 8 dribbles. You're not going to just get to stand around there and just pound the ball and try to make plays happen. You're going to get 2 or 3 dribbles, and it's going to be up to you to try to do what you can with those dribbles. And I think that's where Arizona fans are going to be excited to see what he can do. I look for a wildly more efficient Caleb Love right there for this Arizona basketball team, and I don't think I'm really breaking any news right there. All he just has to do, though, I think, is trust this system, and I think he'll be a 15, 16 point per game dude, and I think you'll see his percentages more around 45% as opposed to 37%. I think a lot of that goes to coaching, and I think some people are missing the boat right there, not getting that point. Now, I think when it comes to some of the rest of the players on the team, then it gets a little more fascinating then. But that's kind of those are your 3 new dynamic players in there. They're going to be brought in that I think bring a little bit of a toughness, a little bit of a ball handling factor. Now, we're going to talk about a holdover who kind of is what he is, and he's a good player. I was overall wrong on him, but Tommy Lloyd was as well, and that's Pel Larson. Pel Larson is kind of the embodiment of last year's team, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because they were a number 2 seed. But Pel Larson is pretty tough. Pretty tough, excuse me. Well, he is pretty tough, I'll say that. But he can't really dribble the ball, not a great shooter, and just kind of limited. But he can do a lot of things really well, but nobody's really going to be scared of Pel Larson. That's probably the best way that I can put it. No, on any scouting report, nobody's going to say, oh, gosh, we got to deal with Pel Larson. But I think Pel Larson in kind of that tertiary, maybe that 4th role on the perimeter, I think will be just fine. You don't want him to have to dribble the ball at all because, quite frankly, he can't dribble, and he's never going to be able to come off screens and shoot threes like a Kyle Korver because he shoots this odd set shot. We don't like the set shot. But other than that, though, like I said, there's a lot to like about him kind of in that role player role, and I think you're going to continue to see that here for the U of A. I am curious as to what that next step is for him. Can he make that next step? Can he be a 14 point per game dude? I don't see that. I think he's going to be about 11, 4, and 3, and that's fine. I would also like to see him come off the bench, though. I think some guys are just better coming off the bench, and for whatever reason, Pel Larson is one of those dudes who is just better coming off the bench. It showed last year when he was starting, he looked woefully out of place, but then when he came off the bench, everything looked good. So, you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's my motto. But the real overhaul with Arizona basketball, and I think what so many are excited to see, though, is Mr. Keshad Johnson. Now, guy out of San Diego State. You got to remember, Keshad, super athletic, really, really strong, and tough. He averaged 7 and 5 last year at SDSU. I get all of that. I think that his numbers are going to be more like 14 and 8 here at the U of A. And not only do I think he's going to be more like 14 and 8 at the U of A, I think that he is going to I think that he's going the way that he can run the court, the way that he can finish in traffic, and a little bit of a toughness. He's not going to back down from anybody. Again, Julius Tabellas, 19-9 last year, but when it really came down to it, Zoo was never really the dude that wanted the ball in a big spot, especially come NCAA tournament time. We saw it 2 straight years where he folded. I don't care what his numbers were against Princeton. When the going got tough, he didn't want the ball, and he really didn't want any part of the situation. Now, I'm not saying that Keshad Johnson's going to be the dude that you just clear out for and he goes, but Keshad Johnson is also not going to back away from the situation there in the way that Zoo did. But I think that, and we've had Jack Murphy on, and Murph said that I think Keshad Johnson's an NBA player. We've had Aaron Torres who said the exact same thing. I look for him to be possibly Arizona's best player. Again, it's going to be a different kind of best player, but from a hustle, athleticism, strength perspective, Keshad Johnson, I think, is going to be that dude. And I think he's going to be somebody that Arizona has been woefully short on these past couple years. That's where I'm very excited to see what Keshad can do, because again, Arizona hasn't really had a guy like that during this time. And I think Tommy Lloyd knows that one as well. And that's why he went out and got him. So between Jaden Bradley, Caleb Love, Keshad Johnson, you got a lot tougher across the board. With 2 of those guys, you got a lot better ball handling. And with Keshad Johnson, you got a guy up front who's going to be much, much tougher in the grand scheme of things. And I think that's where, if you're an Arizona fan, you should be pretty excited about that one. All right. Now, we're going to continue to talk a little bit about the front court, some of these newcomers. But first, let's talk about Jase Medical. All right, here's the deal with Jase Medical. Use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Again, get yours today at jasemedical.com. Everybody's using Jase Medical because whatever your ailment is, whatever you need, Jase Medical has it. And the great thing about it, too, is, you're a little bit sore, you're not feeling well. Go with the people that have been endorsed all across the board right there, and that is the good folks at Jase Medical right there. And again, use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. You will thank me later for it. Check it out. All right, we're going to take a quick little break. We're going to come back. We're going to break down the rest of this new looked Arizona team that the national pundits are sleeping a little bit on. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, the show brought to you by Birddogs. All right, now, up front, Oumar Ballo. Was very disappointed in Oumar Ballo, leader of men this offseason. Oumar Ballo got into very bad shape, and you saw it on the trip, and honestly, that should never happen. And should it not happen, it's disappointing because he's a 5th-year senior player that I think a lot of people were hoping was going to really kind of take that next step. And again, he's a tough dude, good player, but I think he needed somebody behind him that was really going to push him. And that's where Mount Crous comes in. Montius Crous at 7'2", 280 pounds. Mount Crous can do a lot out there. He can shoot a little bit. He's actually a pretty good passer. He's got a kind of that old school back to the basket Gonzaga game that we're used to seeing, but he's going to be a problem out there for opponents. And it's just going to be exciting too to be able to watch it, because he's going to push Oumar in a way that Oumar didn't have anybody last year that could push him. And I think Mount Crous is going to be that starting center. Whenever Oumar Ballo, leader of men, does move on, it's going to be Mount Crous. I think he brings a level of toughness, a level of physicality that Arizona just didn't have this past year. I'm still not sleeping on Dylan Anderson, but we'll see where Dylan Anderson stays. But as far as 2 other guys that bring a little bit of a flash, a flare that Arizona didn't have last year, we got to talk about KJ Lewis. The recruiting experts missed the boat entirely on KJ Lewis. And not only did they miss the boat entirely, they were, to put it mildly, he should have been much more highly rated than he was. Now, a big part of it is that I I think some scouts, some fans just tried to get a little too ahead of themselves right there, not realizing how good this dude is. But again, he pretty much passes the eye test in every single way. We talked about it before with Jalen Clark at UCLA, but that's where I think we're kind of at with KJ Lewis, and that he is going to be a very, very good player at the U of A. And not only is he going to be a very good player at the U of A, I think he's going to be a good player sooner than later, and he's going to be a guy that I think is going to force his way into the rotation. And I don't think people thought that at this point last year, except for me and a few other wise gentlemen. But he's another dude that Arizona didn't have a lot of last year. A tough player that was able to make a lot of plays. Defensively, finish in transition. He's uber athletic. You saw that in the trip over to Israel. And I think you're going to see more of that going forward. And honestly, I think you're going to see a dude who by year 2 or year 3 here at the very least is going to be on a lot of NBA draft charts. That's how good I think he can be. And that's why I think Arizona is very, very lucky to have him right there. But KJ Lewis, a diamond in the rough that shouldn't have been a diamond in the rough. And then Paulus Morses, never met a shot that he didn't like. But I think a big part of it is he's got a confidence level to him that we haven't seen before here from a lot of different guys, especially the international players. And Morales showed that. It'll be fascinating to see what the next level is for him. But I will say this, that I do think that I think he's going to be the guy that will be able to get to the hoop, be able to get some threes, and be able to do a bunch of different things. But overall, this is a much, much tougher roster that Arizona has had in the past, and I think we should all embrace that. The national media is sleeping on Jed Fish's team. The national media is sleeping on Tommy Lloyd's team, and that is just that. All right, we're going to be back with you tomorrow. We're going to have a little bit of a cornucopia of basketball and football. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats.